Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on wherever you are. I'm Vinay, and it's my pleasure to welcome each one of you. Today, we'll be discussing about proactive detection and remediation of large-scale identity attacks with IBM Security Verify SaaS.
My name is Milan Patel, and in today's session, what we're going to be covering is a few agenda items associated with the ability and how Verify is able to detect and remediate large-scale identity attacks. What we're going to be covering today is we're going to be covering a few things. We're going to be covering the market patterns and customer pain points associated with the problem statement and the challenges that organizations face. We're going to be talking about the outcomes and the personas that we're looking to address as part of delivering this enhancement as well as innovation related to detecting and mitigating against large-scale identity attacks, given that they come in various forms and fashions. We're going to give a quick overview of how we're doing that in the context of IBM Verify, and then we're going to do a few demos associated with how it's experienced, how it's set up, and part of that's going to give an overview of the Verify threat detection set of capabilities specifically. So jam-packed agenda. Excited to share with you the approach that we're taking, the differentiated approach that we're taking, and how we are making that available in the context of our products. Okay, so to get started, let's first level set on the customer pain points that we're really addressing and that we're really putting this in the context of. So when we first think about the challenges that our customers have come to us with is they are seeing a lot of anomalies, especially as the notions of data breaches have become, unfortunately, a common thing happening in a daily occurrence. Organizations start to get worried when they see deviations and variations, and they see a bit of spikes happening in their environment related to identity and access management. So one of the first things they ask us is, hey, I'm seeing an increase in failed logins. Is it a threat, right? Because part of this could be a credential stuff. Part of this could be a DDoS attack. Part of this could be a brute force attack. And one of the things that is required here is how do they monitor and how do they get insights to stay ahead of these possible trends as they are actually happening in real time? Is there a potential vulnerability? So there could be a potential DDoS attack because there's no limit in the overall number of logins attempts, but hackers could also be using credential stuffing methods and being able to get into systems, or they could be using password spray attacks where they're using compromised credentials and spraying it across multiple usernames. Which leads us to the next and last one of the last vectors here. Of course, there's more, but these are some of the things that customers have come to us with is the passwords being used are on a set of common or phished or stolen credential lists that need to be checked as users are logging in. So what does this all culminate into? Well, the cost of data breach in 2024 actually increased. It went from 4.45 million to 4.88 million. And this is a single cost of a data breach. Now, the impacts of this is from a cost perspective critical and paramount. And if you think about the types of information being leaked in those data breaches, nearly half of all those data breaches involved customer personal identifiable information. So end users are being compromised, their trust with brands are being compromised, and their information is being spread across the board. And the importance here for an organization is a breach for a customer in one organization could mean that they open up and are susceptible with your organization because typically a user carries the same set of credentials with them across different accounts online. So the main thing that we're looking to address here is how do we help organizations' digital platforms to be secured to stay ahead of these identity thefts and breaches. Now, a few more data points here. The cost of data breach also outlines what are the cost associated with the vector of attack. Now, if you look at this, the top two most frequent vectors of attack are 100% oriented to an IAM solution being able to mitigate, either providing phishing resistant technologies for authentication or for analyzing the use of stolen and compromised credentials and doing that in a manner of scale, not just one-off at login, but having a robust engine that allows you to do that. So what are the things that an IAM solution needs, right, in helping in this context? Well, we just talked about it, a native threat detection and password intelligence capability, native phishing resistant authentication methods, which we'll be getting into, and then native continuous risk detection as users are attempting to log in. The full link to the 2024 cost of data breaches is there in the material that will be shared. But again, this is all putting in the context of an outside looking in approach of how things are assessed and evaluated. Okay, so why are we building this and what are we building? So our persona is Scott. Scott's our admin, an IAM admin. Scott does a lot of things. He needs to secure their organization against large-scale identity attacks. He needs to proactively identify threats such as account takeover and account lockout. So Scott, as an admin, he wants to have visibility into suspicious traffic for identity-related attacks and secure his organization against large-scale attacks and proactively mitigate identity theft. So that's really what we're looking to get at, right? The who is the admin, the what is to identify suspicious traffic and for identity-related attacks, and the wow is to do that proactively, have that full visibility, and then do so in a way where there's native mitigation in the platform, so Scott doesn't have to do much manual remediation. Okay, so with that, what we're going to do is we're going to cover what is IBM Security Verify for those that don't know. And we're then going to get into the specific details of what is the threat detection module do. So IBM Security Verify is an identity as a service. It provides single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, risk-based authentication, and governance and lifecycle management. So we'll be showing you some of this stuff in the demos. The other key aspect to Verify is it allows you to help modernize your IAM infrastructure and IAM tech stack depending on where you're starting from. So if you have directories on-prem, if you have applications on-prem, if you have legacy applications, if you need to protect things that are more oriented to workforce use cases like Radius servers or Windows servers or PAM servers, Verify has the modules and the set of capabilities to address that. Verify is a fully SaaS offering, software as a service. So all you really have to do is set up and configure things, and you'll be seeing that here in the demo. I've highlighted the items that are relevant for our conversation today, in which you can see the richness of the capabilities that Verify offers, and then where some of the items that we're going to be covering today sit in the context of the plans and the subscriptions associated with Verify's capabilities. Okay, with that, let's talk about the proactive remediation and identity-based attacks with IBM Security Verify and the threat detection and response capabilities we have in the products. So on the bottom is where we have our native threat detection and response capabilities in the box that says IBM Security Verify. We do a few things to assess this, so I'll keep this very simple so we can get into some of the details for each of these. But we have really four key areas that we look for threats related in the context of the service itself with IBM Security Verify. The first is we have a edge protection that looks at malicious traffic, macro level attacks like DDoS attacks, macro level things like SQL injection and things of that nature, right? So that's our web application firewall that runs across the service. The next thing we do is we actually analyze threats associated with login information that we're seeing, right? So this traffic is typically seen as good traffic to the edge protection. But this is where we start applying some of the contextual information around, is it a brute force attack based on the deviation of login failures? Is it a credential stuffing attack? Is it a password spray attack because it's checking the list of compromised credentials we have and it's enumerating on, a significant amount of users? Is it using actionable IPs that we get from feeds, right, associated with the suspicious IP traffic? So that's really a threat detection aspect. And this happens before a user even attempts to go to a first factor login or typing in a username and password. The second check that we do pre-authentication is when a user is actually typing in a username and password, is we check to see if the users are using compromised credentials. And then the third aspect, which is the adaptive access and passkeys, is once a user is authenticated, we start doing a user-specific risk score. And of course, we have the ability to mitigate this with passkeys, which is phishing-resistant authentication. So this is at a very high level the engine that we have associated with threat detection and response, and all the information that we have can be sent to a third-party tool as needed. But here we're seeing a shift left in uh, how we detect and mitigate this more natively in the platform um, related to identifying identity-related threats. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be talking about here is the password intelligence. So as just a quick use case and impact statement, password intelligence, the use case here is to identify and prevent individuals from using common breached passwords that mitigate against large breach that mitigate against data breach attacks. The impact statement here is in a 3-week period, a customer found 400,000 accounts using common breach passwords, right? So it's pretty impactful in that setup. So the next one is the proactive remediation, the threat analyzer and the threat detection. So this actually happens before the user actually enters a username and password. What we look for is we identify what IP address the user is coming from. And based on the IP address the user is coming from, we're able to assess the risk of that IP address as critical or as a warning severity. And what we're able to do is based on the traffic that we see across global events, across the numerous verified tenants that leverage our service, we're able to analyze all that data and take advantage of the applied machine learning and the applied AI that we put on top of being able to identify and detect these level of threats. So to be more specific, there's a few indicators that we look at. The first is known indicators of compromise. So these are known and established suspicious IP addresses, and this is powered by X-Force. We look at brute force attacks. So if there's multiple failed logins from risky IPs, multiple username and password failures, and we detect this based on behavior anomalies and changes and deviations of failure logins, right? So we, again, apply the machine learning to detect some of that stuff. Credential stuffing attacks, so multiple usage of username and passwords for a single user, multiple usage of compromised credentials. Password spray attack, so same password being used for multiple usernames, right? So this is where we recognize patterns and leverage things across the set of capabilities that we've built as part of analyzing these attack vector types. And then the last one is around real-time detection of suspicious traffic using machine learning. So we use the historical data across all these to be able to then apply machine learning to associate and assess the risk for that. Now the proactive remediation, so the top basically does the detection. The bottom actually provides an out-of-the-box remediation approach. So you can actually proactively block some of those attacks and that traffic. Okay, the threat detection and remediation of identity attacks. So the use case here is proactively identify and mitigate large-scale identity attacks from suspicious IPs and attackers. The impact statement here is In about 1 year, we found and detected 11 and a half suspicious activities for 61 customers. Um, and we've detected 150 major threats for 11 customers, and we actually, as of recent, detected one yesterday. The next thing that we're going to look at is as the user is then logged in, and let's say they've gone through the the threat analyzer to analyze the large scale identity attacks, they're entering um, proper credentials. They then start to log in. Now what we're looking at is how do we detect fraudulent users, users that have actually done account takeover, and how do we mitigate against those types of scenarios where we may need to do things like MFA or even block the user once they've attempted to actually perform a login action. So this is where things like adaptive access and passkeys come into play. So phishing resistant authentication in IBM Security Verify. So IBM Security Verify supports passkeys and has been supporting that for quite some time. As you can see on the left, this is actually how we in IBM log in every single day at work for an employee use case. About 300,000 plus IBM employees have rolled out passwordless authentication across their accounts. This is also being used in a consumer IAM use case for a state here in the US, 8.6 million citizens. They've rolled out passkeys. So when we think about this, this is all about how do we remove the notion of passwords, which is a vector for threats. What we wanted to end with here is we wanted to share how you can get started. If you scan the QR code, you can get a trial and spin up IBM Security Verify. Basically, do what we just did and get the environment needed to start exploring what IBM Security Verify can offer and the power that IBM Security Verify has related to identity and access management use cases for both workforce and consumer identities. Part of the trial, you'll get the ability to add apps, do single sign-on, create users, do MFA and adaptive access, and do this proactive mitigation and remediation, and check for common credentials. What you can see on the right is just some of the reports that we just showed, right, that are available through the product.